Vi går vidare. Claudia Nye.
Okay, right. Hello again.
Sorry about that. We are dividing this press conference in different parts.
Last year, I came to Sweden and asked you some questions and made a documentary, COVID Tango and the Lagom Way, about your Lagom approach to COVID-19. Now I come back to ask you some more questions. So when I saw you, you confirmed, because this has been ratified by the statistics, that this is a virus that only affects the very old, the very vulnerable, and the very sick. Do you think you ruled out the AstraZeneca for the under 65 and at one point? I don't know if you're aware that in the UK and in many countries, they are bringing vaccination for children in September, and they are doing a no jab, no job policy. What's your opinion on that?
If you need to vaccinate children or not, I think remains to be seen. I think there are signs saying that if you have a very high level of vaccination coverage in your adult population, you probably don't need to vaccinate, at least not all your children, maybe down to 16, maybe down to 12 or something, but definitely not all children. And in Sweden, all our vaccination programs built very, very much on voluntary vaccinations. To put any kind of incentives like that connected to vaccinations would definitely not fit into the Swedish model.
Right. And you also ruled out the PCR tests. Can you explain why?
I would say that we have been very clear about that the tests should be used where they are most effective. The tests should be used so that they will be connected to some kind of intervention. To test just for testing is of course not a good option. And especially during the spring, we had a very limited capacity and we needed to focus our testing in certain areas. And as soon as we managed to increase our capacity, we have tested everybody with symptoms, or offered tests to everybody with symptoms in Sweden, very much similar to most other countries.
The PCR tests are done for everyone here in the UK, those with or without symptoms. What's your opinion? Do you think they serve any purpose for people without symptoms?
I don't know if they serve any purpose in Great Britain. We have been doubtful that it will serve any purpose in Sweden, because the tests are not really designed for people without symptoms. The false negatives, false positives, and everything like that tends to become quite a big part of the test you do, which creates a lot of problems, not least in Sweden, where there is a lot of legal obligations also connected to being a case. And we believe that we get a good effects by testing people with symptoms, but then realizing that when we talk about symptoms, we also talk about very light symptoms. So don't wait until you become really sick before getting tested. Get testing as soon as you start feeling ill.
In November 2020, the British Medical Journal published a paper announcing that evidence of asymptomatic spread is insufficient to justify mass testing. And followed by, you're aware, in December, a Wuhan study of 10 million residents could not come up with evidence of asymptomatic spread. I wanted to ask you, have you come across some punctual, reliable evidence of asymptomatic spread in the case of COVID-19?
Not really. I mean, there are occasional individual cases where it might be like that. I think what happens is something pre-symptomatic spread does occur sometimes, but that's also very difficult to define because the first symptoms are very light. So to say when you have symptoms and when you don't have symptoms is sometimes very, very difficult, especially on the individual level, very difficult to define clearly. We have performed 10, 20,000 tests, PCR tests on people in a population without symptoms and found a few. But when we have talked to those people, they have all either had symptoms anyway and didn't really realize it, or developed symptoms very soon after the test. So in our experience, to be contagious and have COVID-19 without any symptoms at all, that's probably very rare. We haven't come across any cases like that in Sweden, really.
So with no punctual evidence of asymptomatic transmission and false PCR tests, what we have is a pandemic or a case-demic?
No, of course, there is a very close connection with how much you test and how many cases you find. I think the data from Denmark is very clear about that. Denmark is testing very, very much, every individual several times. Yeah, I don't know, a month or something like that. So they are testing, and then of course they found a lot of people with COVID-19. If that is a good strategy or not, I think the evaluation in the future will tell us that or not. But definitely, the more the tests, the more cases you find. Even if the amount of cases that are not found with the level of testing that we have in Sweden, that is testing people with symptoms, is not that great. We talk about maybe 50% more when we go around making serology and so on. So it's not like some other diseases where you have maybe 10 times as many people out in a society that you never find. You do find most people with a level of testing that we keep in Sweden.
The last time I asked you in summer 2020 whether you would change your approach in the coming autumn. And at the time you were the only public health body in Europe that was untampered by government. And in January 2021, as you know, parliamentary statutory powers were amended so that the government could intervene. So my question is, do you think that the draconian measures that followed made any changes to the development of the viral curve and the development of the pandemic in Sweden?
First of all, I mean, the agency has had a constant dialogue with the government ever since the first case appeared in Sweden. So we are definitely in constant dialogue with the government, and we have different mandate and different powers, and those have remained intact over time. So it's not that we are running around without having the consent of our government. We are after our government body. I would not call what happened in the new year draconian measures if you compare to what's I think it was more about better regulating the possibilities for big events, mainly for big events, to be more clear about the legal background to the restrictions. That did not really change the restrictions very much. It gave a better legal background and gave us also better flexibility to adapt the legal regulations to different environments.
Right. And would you make any changes to your approach? I ask you the same question for the coming months of autumn and winter.
No, I mean, right now we believe that we are on the right track. As you probably know, the number of cases in Sweden are falling rapidly, very rapidly, I would say, much more rapid than we ever thought was possible. I don't see that we're going to make any major changes in the fall. We have a plan for dismantling most of the legal restrictions early fall, and then what we're mainly focusing on is to keep a preparedness for outbreaks and for a new spread, so that we quickly can go back and become very effective in our contact tracing and testing again.
So I asked you about the meaning of the Swedish phrase, the Lagom way, our documentary that followed, which I don't know if you watched. Did you watch it?
No, I'm sorry, at least I don't remember this.
Anyway, it draws a comparison between your approach to the pandemic as the measured one, the Lagom way. Do you think that's a fair appraisal, and do you think that's recommendable, for future pandemics, rather than these extreme draconian rules we have been exposed to?
I think each country needs to go back and see what they've done and what they think about the effects, and also see what were the negative effects of what they did. And I think that's very important. And I think that's something we definitely need to learn for the future. We need to understand much better what are the negative effects of different things we do to stop communicable diseases. And can we do less with the same effect? I think that's also something we need to learn rapidly. That would probably be slightly different in different countries, I would say, because the culture, the way we interact, many different things, of course, also affect what level of effect you get by doing different things.
Yeah, as you say, every country is different and every person is different. And these draconian rules have said one for all, one rule for all. What do you think about one rule for all?
Yeah, sometimes in public health you need to do things like that, but I think it's the more you can tailor it to the problems you have in your group of people, in your population, the better it is, because then you can avoid side effects.
Okay, we need to end. I'm sorry,
okay,
we have one
thank
journalist.
You very much, and please, I look forward to hearing what you thought of the film when you get a chance to watch it.
Yeah, please send me the link.
I will. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for your time.